Greetings and good morning, fellow targeted individual. I want to talk about coercive control and how it's utilized in Black Ops, acts like gang stalking. Coercive control tactics are seen sometimes through a public performance, like street theater, which is done by role players at times to isolate, to destabilize, and to surveil targets under plausible deniability. These tactics are based on Black Ops logic, and they're typically based on the utilization of crowd dynamics and scripted interactions to enforce psychological dominance. So, coercive control is a strategic pattern of domination that erodes autonomy and traps victims in invisible prisons of fear and manipulation. The key tactics include isolation. See, the enemy seeks to cut you off from social ties, and they seek to limit your movement and control your communication. So let's say you're experiencing property damage. You're noticing people throwing excessive amounts of trash on your property when you live in a middle-class neighborhood and you don't see trash nowhere, but only at your house. And you're noticing extensive damage into your car, harassment. So you go to cops. Cops don't really support you, but they provide you a report that's all redacted. Just enough for you to get your car repaired by your insurance company. But they don't investigate any of the other allegations or the people. They're shielding them. Well, they're doing this to allow you to continue to be harassed. If you ever go to law enforcement, a sheriff's office, a fusion center, police department, and you're documenting serious crimes against you, crimes that if they were to occur towards these people, they would be investigated. But if it occurs towards you, it doesn't. That's to show you that they're not going to help you. That activity alone allows you to be continually harassed, and this prevents healthy relationships. It also limits movement, because if you're being harassed where you walk, where you fish, where you bike, and you can prove that you're being tracked through Stingray technology, well, if nothing is done about it, then that activity is just being allowed. So essentially what the enemy does is they gaslight you because they don't want to deal with institutional partners, interagency partners, and contractors. So they try to write your reality through denial, contradiction, and staged confusion. See, these contractors, they typically go to law enforcement. They typically will tell them, look, I'm doing an investigation on behalf of this agency. If the target does come to you, make sure to conceal what's occurred. See, the perpetrators doing this, fellow TIs, want to gaslight you. And then the perpetrators may also utilize civic groups and other partners to micromanage you, trying to regulate daily routines, choices, even your thoughts. And let me tell you how they do this. Let's say you're thinking about fishing, but you know if you go to a certain spot, you're going to get harassed. Let's say every time you go to the spot, this defense contractor shows up. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable. Let's say they park their car and you're 100 yards on the bike trail or walking trail. They may simply park their car and walk right up to you and walk back to their car. And every day this happens, you're thinking it's a coincidence. So they also utilize surveillance and intimidation to harm you. They monitor your behavior and they use threats to enforce compliance. So let's say that you're at your house and then all of a sudden you receive a phone call with gunshot noises or heavy breathing. Well, that may make it where you may not want to go out as much. You may not want to take long hikes in nature when you had spent the day planning to go the next day for a long hike in nature. Now you're wondering, if I take that long walk in nature and I've just received these threatening phone calls, could I be harmed? Also, fellow TIs, these people that are into this gang stalking stuff, they like to punish what they perceive as being disobedience through public shaming or subtle retaliation. Let me give you an example. When I lived in Texas, I could eat out at a restaurant, and all of a sudden somebody would come in. And let's say I went to a store and bought two pairs of blue socks and a toothbrush. Somebody may come in and just sit at a table next to me and talk about the same thing I just bought. So they may utilize indirect conversations. Like, let me give you an example. One day I went to a place called the Tiki Bar in Mineola, Florida. I went to that restaurant against a lake to watch the sunset and have a meal. And a guy comes in and says, hey, you know that guy named Robert that has that red car? He mentioned the make and model, same one that I had. He says, I think he's a real piece of shit. He's Latino. He's just a scumbag. So I'm Latino. So I didn't think nothing of it. But then the exact moment I stood up an hour later after eating my meal and watching a game, they stand up, get behind me, and whistle off the top of their lungs. So the enemy may do some things to infuriate you as you're eating a meal. They may give you subtle hints that they're monitoring you. And then when you stand up to leave, they may get behind you really close or scream their heads off. That's not technically a crime. And for them to play it off, what they'll typically do is, let's say nobody's been by for an hour. When you're leaving, they'll have somebody exit a car that's been outside for an hour to walk towards the restaurant. So that way it appears they're screaming at a friend, and it's all scripted. So they do different skits to systematically disrespect you. These tactics are often deployed gradually, and they're cloaked in charm. So they'll smile on your face, or it may be cloaked not just in charm, but concern, and escalate once emotional dependency is secured. So they try to get the target to go to a counselor for an activity based on black ops that they're not going to be able to prove. So the only way you can prove this is if you have video documentation, you've gone to private investigators, you have police support in some cases, but police support isn't necessary to prove these activities do occur, but it actually helps. And when you go to a counselor and you show these files, they still may be reluctant to help you because these are people which work with institutional partners. And if they're putting down, this cop lied on a report, here's the video evidence, they might think, I might be getting myself in something way over my head. Let me just go along with this and write this person off. So the role players, fellow TIs, the contractors that are utilized for these black ops operations may simulate arguments, accidents. They may seek to promote an emotional breakdown near the target to provoke anxiety or confusion. Let me give you an example. One day I was at a mall. I think it's called OC, Florida. It's a town really close to Winter Garden. And I'm in there buying stuff. When I get back to my car, a lady is underneath my car. And I'm like, ma'am, can you get out from under my car? Well, about 15 feet away is a guy screaming, I can't take it no more. So this was all scripted, fellow TIs. My car is parked in a massively large parking lot. That took me a few minutes to get there. What is somebody doing underneath my car? And then this guy, he's not next to her, so it indicates that he may not be with her, but he's screaming his head off in proximity to where she's at, that he can't take it no more. See, the enemy at that time was harassing me in parking lots, systematically, where I ate. They would go into restaurants. So they do a lot of things based on street theater. Role players may simulate arguments and accidents, so that way you're aware that they're on your tail. They also may utilize clothing and objects in coded language. They may do a lot of hand signals. So, this orchestrated exclusion or staged rejection in public spaces is to reinforce alienation. Let me give you an example. Let's say right now that you're invited to a birthday party, and all of a sudden you notice that nobody wants to talk to you, even the people that invited you. This is an imaginary scenario. Wouldn't you feel weird if you went to a place, you bring somebody a gift, you're invited to their birthday party, but they don't even say hi to you? And then the people there, they push you out of the group. So these people utilize similar strategies in local neighborhoods. And let me give an example. One day I was going for an e-bike ride, and then I was surrounded as I got to the front entrance of where I live at in a highly rural area. I was surrounded by my neighbors. One works for Lockheed Martin. Another one has a business at a small business opportunity center. Another one's an 8A business vendor. I mean, the list goes on. So by utilizing crowd-based isolation and baiting tactics, they're hoping that you will also react. Actors may impersonate acquaintances, or they may simulate recognition to destabilize the target's sense of reality. Contractors may blend into public settings and track and record you. So let's say you're in line at the Britton Plaza on South Del Mayberry in Tampa, Florida. I don't live there, but every once in a while I'll take car drives and I'll eat at restaurants in that area. There's a good Thai restaurant nearby there. They may just simply take a picture of you while you're in line. And you may notice that they show up right when you do. Sometimes the perpetrators, utilizing Stingray technology, actually have partnerships with people in your area so they can easily flag some people. They show up at a place, or they come as a group, and they may have one person get behind you in line, another person outside of the line, and they're just doing different skits to annoy you, using pictures with flash and taking pictures close to your face, and utilizing elderly veterans and women. Targets are typically surrounded at times when they're targeted by people which have covert ties to institutions, agencies, and private firms. So they seek to destroy the target's reputation, relationships, and routines are typically undermined. So let's say you like going to a Chinese restaurant. You love going to this certain place on Saturday, but then all of a sudden your hot food is coming out cold. Everybody at your table has cold food, and you see somebody else, like another family that came in when you did, with the same dishes, but you see steam rising from their food. Well, it's not a coincidence, fellow TIs. And what they'll do is they'll go into a place and say, this guy here, he's a really bad guy. He's harmed kids. He's under investigation. And we want to get him out of town. Here's $100. Will you do this for us? And then the people doing this may think that what's occurring is a legitimate law enforcement action, when in fact it's a highly illegal activity which is impacting the target for 20 years. According to David Lawson stated that they slander all targets as being pedophiles. This helps to promote these campaigns against us. They are women experiencing this, men experiencing this, thousands of veterans. I even know a guy that lost his son in SEAL Team 6. These were the guys that went after bin Laden. He's a targeted individual. Let's look at DHS whistleblower Julia Davis. They slandered her as an extremist, a terrorist. So what they do is they slander you in the worst ways. They'll say you're a terrorist, a pedophile. When anybody can run your tag, anybody can clearly see that you don't have nothing like that on your record. This is to make it so that way when people see you, fellow TIs, they react. They treat you differently. So let me go over this one more time so I can ingrain in your mind what coercive control is about. Coercive control refers to a pattern of behavior designed to dominate, isolate, and intimidate another person. It includes tactics like surveillance and monitoring, isolation from support systems. It includes threats and intimidation, control over daily life, finances, and communication. Coercive control can be used as part of false flag operations, especially to manipulate perception, suppress dissent, or manufacture consent for aggressive actions. Coercive control refers to a pattern of psychological manipulation, intimidation, and domination used to strip individuals of their group autonomy, individuality. It's often deployed in black ops. It's been utilized in Israel through the Mossad, through the UK, through Australia's government, the US, and other governments. These black ops are meant to destabilize you. And key tactics include isolation from alternative viewpoints or support, gaslighting to distort reality, threats and surveillance to induce fear, control of information to shape perception. So if you're going onto Facebook or YouTube, and let's say you've documented targeting, but then all of a sudden you're getting, you're just a nobody, but you're getting 200 or 300 views, but all your comments that you're getting go to spam. But you see other pages, people get comments, they stay there. This is to prevent you from establishing relationships, which could help you to deal with this. This is to promote more isolation. It's seen on Facebook, it's seen on TikTok. So you may want to avoid those networks and join networks which support the Constitution and free speech. So false flag operations are deceptive acts, fellow TIs. They're designed to appear as though they were carried out by another party. Governments or entities may use such to justify war, discredit opponents, manufacture public outrage or fear, shift blame, or obscure accountability. Let me give you an example of how this could potentially work out. So when I lived in Texas, fellow TIs, I was eating out, and at that time I was being harassed by men that drove black SUVs. They wore black suits and thin black ties. So I reached out to my connections, some that had a top secret clearance. They told me that I was being harassed by the CIA, the United States Army, the Citizens Corps programs, local police were concealing it, the Fusion Center was concealing it, DOJ did not want to investigate, the municipality, they were all partners. So these activities, fellow TIs, have false flag elements to them because the people that are going along with this are sometimes benefiting by these discretionary actions. Their city may get extra money under the guises of mutual aid. A little T money may be passed around. And also, if these people have certain ideals that are very left-wing, they may say, I just screwed the guy. Nobody cares. Let's just go after him. So when I lived in Austin, Texas, fellow TIs, I'm eating out one day, and this guy comes up in a black SUV with a thin black tie, black shades, and I'm sitting outside in the restaurant court area. I'm eating a meal at a Mexican restaurant. He comes in and two ladies with Antifa stickers on their car sit with this guy and they're looking at me. They're staring at me every bite that I take. I knew that I was being targeted. I knew that I was being surveilled because every bite that I took, they looked at me. Well, this is the same thing that Judith Baker, that dated JFK Oswald, which was supposedly the killer of JFK. This is the same thing that she talked about experiencing when she dealt with the CIA. And she had to move like every 2 or 3 months to prevent the CIA from targeting her. So they've been targeting her all throughout her life. They're not into no constitutional rights. They target people to make them sick. They were hoping that she would die. This is a very highly sadistic bunch. Now, the people pushing papers in the CIA, a lot of these guys, they're not a threat to anybody. But the ones, the boots on the ground, on the streets, the contractors, they may go to Lockheed Martin, they may go to what do you call this group? Blackwater. They may go to all types of black ops groups that you've never heard of. These acts, fellow TIs, are done so that way you're in a state of fear. And since they have money to burn, nobody's going to believe you. They're going to be like, why you? What makes you so special? Why would somebody go out of their way to systematically harass you when you visit a relative? This is no joke, fellow TIs. I visited a relative a while back. And anytime I visited her parking space, it's assigned to her apartment, would be taken. And the security was like, that's weird. That never happens because there's guest parking. People know not to take other people's parking or the car is towed. There's a sign outside saying, hey, your car will be towed. So I asked my relative, when does this occur? She says, come to think of it, it only happens when you show up. And during that time, I had to go up like 3 flights of stairs to get to her apartment. And there's 2 stairs, one on the left side of the building, one on the right. So when I was going up on the stairs on the right, every floor that I went, a guy, I always say about 300 feet on the other side. When I'm going up the stairs, I can hear him whistle and he's going up the stairs on the other side. So I go visit my family and I'm in their place. And when we say, I had the phone, I just sat it down on a counter. I'm drinking some water before we go out to dinner. And I say, let's go out to eat. Now, you ready to go? I get a stingray alert. The exact moment I open up the door, the guy that was going up the stairs with me on the other side prior was in the corner of the building on the 3rd floor against a wall. The exact moment I exited, he whistled off the top of his lungs. And he's going down the stairs and going out to the very front of the apartment area to get into a black SUV. This occurred systematically. This is to give me the idea that he could harm my family, he's trying to cause me to live in fear. Then when I would go to stores in proximity to that area, first responders would be called. These people would knock on the back doors. They would make false reports. Let's say I'm at a place and I'm eating and I'm discreetly recording with my cell phone, which is in my pant pocket, sticking out a little bit. So you clearly see I haven't said a word besides what I've asked to order. And they may just, somebody may call first responders to show up where I'm at. And then these first responders would just get extremely close to me, like literally like 3 inches from me. Like literally you can feel their breath. They get so close to you, it's so intrusive that it'll make you want to say, can you please step back, sir? So they'll do things which technically aren't illegal, but which are somewhat disrespectful and rude. They also may go into restaurants, fellow TIs. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're at Chris Fru's Steakhouse. When you sit in a chair, you face straight towards the other person. Well, they may just sit sideways in the chair. So their feet aren't under the table. They're out of the table to the side. And they're just staring at you. They may have 4 people at that table, but one of them has his feet sideways. So his feet are not under the table. He's looking directly at you while you eat. And then when the person sees that you look at the family kind of glance, they just kind of look to the side, maybe rub their back like they're stretching their back to play it off. And then let's say the next time you eat, you see that skid again. And then you eat out with your family again. You don't see that skid. But after a few times of eating out, you see it again. You recognize what's occurring. But the people with you don't, because they have not become accustomed to seeing that. But you have, because you've seen it maybe 12 times in the past 6 months. So they do things which you see repeatedly. Then they stop. And what they may do to play it off is where it's not noticed. Let's say you get up from a table, you go to the bathroom. They may wait 30 seconds later and go into a bathroom, and they may just stand there, not use the bathroom, look in a mirror. They may just whistle one time really loud and just stand there. And then the exact moment you flush the toilet, they walk out. So that way they know you have to wash your hands, and then they'll sit down. And then you may see this pattern occur that's very subtle. This is to make you sick, fellow TIs. And then let's say the next day you go shopping. This actually happened to me. These different cars with circular logos, different military departments came to a place where hardly anybody goes to. I think when I go there, I never see more than 3 or 4 cars. It's a small little Vietnamese shop. I always buy stuff. When I go there, I spend like maybe 40, $50 buying noodles and sauces and condiments. Well, they may just pass by you, and every hour you hear a whistle, one whistle, or some type of skit. But you notice they don't buy nothing. They have unusual tags that you typically don't see on the road. So what the enemy does, is, fellow TIs, is they target you by utilizing at times false flag operations, like tactics based on that. And this often relies on coercive control mechanisms to succeed. They utilize media manipulation through Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and so on. This is to help control narratives, to suppress dissent, and amplify false claims. They also may utilize threats or staged crisis to push populations into submission, institutional gaslighting, reframing reality to make whistleblowers seem irrational or dangerous. So this is no joke, TIs. When I lived in Austin, Texas, it was very common for me to go shopping with my family. And I would notice something very bizarre. It would occur literally about 96% of the time I went out with them. So let's say earlier that day I went out, and let's say I'm on the road and I notice 10 white cars behind me. They're all white Crown Vics or Fords. And I drive for 8 miles and do a U-turn and pull into a place. Sometimes they would pull in to the same place. I had no proof they were targeting me. So I would go shopping, and then all of a sudden I would notice something very bizarre would occur. These people that parked next to me would walk up to me and do some unusual stuff. I would notice the person behind me had the same exact groceries as me. So let's say I went into a store and I bought an 8-piece of chicken, a 12-pack of water, 3 heads of lettuce, a blue toothbrush, 1 specific bottle of wine from Argentina, and 1 container of shampoo. They would have the same exact product as me. And there were times that these people, I noticed that one of these white cars that parked with this group was exiting the security room. And these people sometimes would have these curly earpieces, or these earpieces that you really couldn't see too well. They may come in with NASA t-shirts. This occurred in Texas. They may come in with first responder t-shirts or block watch t-shirts. Well, every single day, and when I mean every day, I bought food in Austin, Texas. This occurred. With my family, it occurred about 96% of the time. They would simply, instead of parking their car in the parking lot, they would park their car in the fire lane. They would park right in front of the store, put the emergency lights on, and then they would come in wearing a black suit and thin black tie. And then you know how you go to like Sam's or Costco, they ask for your card? They have to scan it. These people wouldn't have one. They would flash a badge. And then they would just say, go ahead, go. They would nod their head like, go ahead, go in. So these people would just flash their badge for a split second. So they don't know if they're CIA, FBI, or what. And these people would walk up to me and when my family's looking at something, let's say I'm on the side of them, they would walk up to me, whistle one time, and then walk right out the place. It didn't make any sense what they were doing, TIs. But they were doing it to get my attention. Then one day I went to police in that area. Police would not file any reports. They blacked out all the reports. They redacted everything. You know why? Because it was going back to the local FBI field office. It was going back to people that were tied to the Northern Command. It was going back to Citizens Corps partners, to people that were Jewish. One was tied to the ADL. It was going back to the Texas Municipal League. People that were tied to the Fusion Center and Rangers. This was not no investigation, fellow TIs. It was a takedown harassment campaign. And when I went to a counselor, no joke, when I went to a counselor over this, I went with my private investigators' reports, pictures. And I just told them, look, at that time I was going through really bad anxiety. So I told the counselor, look, I'm going through really bad anxiety over this. and I would like to have some anxiety medication. Well, when I went there, I had no idea that when I did the intake forms, the lady that works up front, I ran her tag. She has not even post-secondary education. She just knows how to use Microsoft Office and has a GED. When I mentioned Citizens Corps, she put down delusional. I told them that I had an issue with Citizens Corps. My private investigator confirmed it, and that I was just seeking somebody to talk to, that I felt like I needed something to cope with my anxiety. So I found out later that this same clinic had a partnership with Citizens Corps through Medical Reserve Corps, and that this same organization, the same clinic I went to, was running the Public Safety Committee for the city of Austin. It later closed down, so they may have one under a different organization. So institutional control, the institutions that be affiliates are going to try to control public perception to prevent their enemies from looking bad. This is beyond anything that you could imagine, affiliates. I had a relative that relocated to a different city a while back. And when I would go to her house, let's say I would bring sometimes snacks and food. And then when I would get my luggage for the weekend, I would go back to grab the rest. And I noticed two cars, the same exact year and model as my car, same paint job, pull into the parking lot on the side of an apartment complex where there's only like maybe 10 parking spaces. These people would show up, and I would notice my phone getting really hot. I would get a stingray alert. They would show up and they would park, but they wouldn't stay no longer than 30 seconds. Then they would leave. And I noticed it would get extremely hot as I was walking to the parking lot. And this happened 4 times where they would show up only when I was going back to my car. Well, here's what's really weird, fellow TIs. A while back, I go to a Wawa gas station in this area. And anytime I get in line, these people, they were business owners. Every last one of them owned a business. It can be like a locksmith, a painter, an ex-Marine that's a plumber, and they will just walk up to me, whistle in my face, and walk out or try to skip me in line. That's never happened anywhere in my life like this, like systematically. In a middle-class area, I knew that something wasn't right. So I started running people's tags, and it was coming up CIA, defense contractor, just different things. Then things started making sense. Don't be surprised, fellow TIs, if you're harassed every time you eat out, every time you buy food. And one day I went to a place called Aldi's. I'm with my family shopping, and I'm on the 3rd aisle. There's a lady looking at a product. The exact moment I pass by her, she turns her head completely and looks right at me and whistles. My family was like, okay, this is weird. So what I didn't tell my family is that I had been utilizing stingray detection apps, and I had bought myself this little device which would log all the stingray connections, the time, the place. Now, this helped me, fellow TIs, because it presented a pattern, a practice. So what the enemy does is they try to essentially hijack your life, fellow TIs. Now, I mentioned a while back in this video that I had an issue with the guy that was wearing a black suit and a thin black tie. That I went to a restaurant in Texas. I live in Florida, and it was all the time this would occur. And they would come with people that were tied to fringe groups. They would use nurses. They would go to this is no joke. If you're at a place and they have a diversity and inclusion partner, or they accept contracts, and they're just a business. If they're any type of business, dermatology, dental, they are essentially a way for these perpetrators to harm you because they offer money. So when I was eating at this place, all of a sudden my treatment changed from the cooks. And I found out later on from one of the waiters that somebody had went in there and flagged me. But what he didn't understand was, why would they flag me when I'm just there to eat food? He told me they were there to harass me. So these people would just sit there and stare at me. But here's what's odd about these people, fellow TIs. There's some type of weird thing about some of them. Some of them, they're really gung-ho about Jews. Their thing is Jewish people. It's like DOD, the army. Their thing was Jewish people. But at the same time, it was like they had like this love and hate thing with Israel, because sometimes they would try to put this on solely onto Jewish people, when in fact it was the clandestine people within the group which were trying to change public perception. They were trying to make it appear as if I was dealing with solely with Jews. So what the enemy tries to do is they try to throw you off and have you confused. Are you dealing with Jews? Are you dealing with the army? Because if you talk to somebody, let's say you're dealing with somebody that's never been targeted, and they say, Robert, who's doing this to you? They're going to assume it's one or two people. But if you say, okay, I got video proof, and the video proof shows different interagency partners, the average American is going to be like, Robert, you're nuts. The army, none of these groups would want to target you. But let's say you live in Austin, Texas, and there's a base there, and then you have a few encounters with a few people here and there. That makes sense. So when you explain yourself, fellow TIs, versus utilizing the term gang stalking, utilize the term targeting, because the term gang stalking, fellow TIs, came out around the early 2000s. And some people believe the term could have came out through the CIA, through an operative promoting narrative control, because after a while, when that term came out, it was being utilized by people that were just saying, I'm a targeted individual. Now, there are targeted individuals which experience things that I don't experience. I utilize that term because, in my eyes, it's in reference to being mobbed and harassed and targeted. But there's different types of targets. I don't associate with targeted justice and other targeted individual groups. The only thing I talk about is enhanced surveillance. So if I have any groups online and you see different topics, don't assume that I have those same symptoms. So the enemy, fellow TIs, they go into universities. This is no joke. I was blown away. These people would go into universities. They would go into schools. They would bring Jewish people. And I would think, okay, I'm being harassed by Jewish people. But what it was is I wasn't actually being harassed by Jewish people solely, but a clandestine group. And what this clandestine group did was they went around nicking and picking and utilizing different partners. This makes it where you can't figure out who's doing it. And these groups, some of them are quite large. So what they do is they mob the targeted individual. They mob the person. Well, guess what mobbing is linked to? Mass murder, violence. So that is what they support. And then they pretend they're a safety partner. Oh, we're doing this for our country. We're here to protect the people. When the entire time the person is shopping with their aunt or wife. So they promote violence as necessary when it's unnecessary. I don't know where we get these scumbags from, fellow TIs. They're coming from off our streets and just flooding our military. And I'm not saying that's the case. But I have, fellow TIs, in the past, I've documented a ridiculous amount of women that are active duty in the Army and ex-military. Let me give you an example. Just a few months ago, I take my grandmother to a nail salon at a plaza. She wanted to get her nails done. She's 90 years old. So I noticed there's a Dollar Tree next door. So I figured I'll just go next door and look at something. But I was praying internally before I left that place, and I was asking the Holy Spirit to lead, guide, and direct me. And I felt led to tell my grandmother, look, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm going to go next door. Here's what's really weird. The exact moment I enter the store, a lady with the U.S. Army, she had like a, what do you call those license tag covers? Anyways, it says U.S. Army on it. It was around her tag. She walks in next to me. Something didn't feel right, so I decided I would walk towards the very end of the store and grab a random product. Didn't even look. I walked to the cashier, and guess what she did? So when I got close to the cashier area, close to the front door, about 10 feet away, I set the product down and walked out. Guess what she did? She walked out also. When I looked out the store, there was a guy that was already in line, and he had like 2 2 people in front of him. This guy went out with that girl, and then they look back at me and they wave. Well, I zoomed in on their tags. I found some pretty good information. These people were ex-Army. They were hired by a contractor. Well, here's what's really weird. I drive to a mall on the outskirts of Orlando, and somebody is calling the cops on me while eating with my 90-year-old grandmother. So I'm with her at a restaurant. We're the only people at the restaurant. So this guy comes in the restaurant. He never gets a table. The restroom was just down the ways. And he comes into the restaurant. He looks at me. And then at the exact moment he's going to the restroom, he has to pass by me. He looks at me and whistles one time. When he exits, he does the same thing. So when he exits the restaurant, I see him giving a guy a high five. And this other guy comes in with a woman. They sit across from me and my family. The exact moment that I stood up, fellow TIs, these people whistle. So what they do is they do little skits, fellow TIs, to get your attention. This is no joke. When I lived in Austin, Texas, every single day, besides Saturday and Sunday, I would go out and get my mail. I would notice that the area would be spotless, but the exact moment I would get back, there would be trash all on my steps. The lady that lived below me, anytime I would go out of my residence or come home, she would open the door and just look at me wearing all black clothes. All black. So imagine you get home at 8:12 at night, you get out of church, and your neighbor exits their home, and they walk to you wearing all black. When I would go to my school in Cybertex, this same guy would show up dressed just like her. The same exact shirt, brand, everything. So one day he tells me that he has my personal information. He hands me a sheet of paper that has my address, it has my social security number, all my personal information. He tells me he has kids. And I'm asking him, why are you doing this to me? He would never park his car at the school. He would park it 2 buildings away, not because he was ashamed of his car, but because he was doing a false flag operation. He was going into the school to harass me in an effort to provoke me to react. And that's what my teacher told me. My teacher told me that the city of Austin had supported my targeting. Well, at that time, the city of Austin was being directed by Mayor Steve Adler, which was also the director of the ADL. So I was being harassed by Jewish people, Citizens Corps partners. I had even wrote this mayor before moving to Texas to inform him that I had been harassed by Jewish people, that I wasn't racist, but that I had made a video about Zim Israeli Shipping Company, never made any accusations. And then all of a sudden I started getting harassed and threatened over the video. So I removed the channel, but I downloaded the videos. I'm probably going to upload them in the future, maybe when I leave the U.S. So what our enemies do is also, fellow TIs, they'll remind partners. They'll say, okay, this guy is anti-Semitic. He's this. When you're not even anti-Semitic. It's like Charles Kirk. I pretty much go along with how he believes almost like 98% because I'm conservative in mindset. So what the enemy does is they try to paint this picture that you're something when you're not. And they try to utilize that and justify their actions by how you think, label you something that you're not by the way you think. And behind our security apparatus, fellow TIs, there are associations tied to national security, homeland security, and different groups through associations. These back doors, similar to like regional councils running Citizens Corps in some communities, are back doors where money can be exchanged, where people can turn a blind eye to things. There are even round tables with judges. These are back doors where people can get pay and get away with stuff that the average citizen would not. These are sometimes back doors for cops to get information and support versus you getting support. So once you experience this, once you see what's going on, and once you're harassed on a daily basis for years and you're denied support from cops, and you can prove it. When you can prove it, fellow TIs, You don't need to go out and promote narrative control. Save that information. Join forums overseas, people that are involved in counterterrorism, public safety. Reach out to governments, all their departments. So when you go to that country, if anything happens to you, that government can say, you know what, this guy was harassed by the CIA. He was harassed by the Army. He was harassed by DOD. Cops refused to help. Did you know that if you want to get political asylum in another country, the main thing is showing persecution? And if you're Hispanic and there's no other cases that are similar in your area, and you go to another government and you say, look, I'm Latino, I've been harassed by a bunch of homeowners that are white, that are making over $100,000 a year. There's no other reports in the area besides mine. Well, how does that look? It looks really racist. And not only is it racist, fellow TIs, it's an activity which causes madness, going around harassing families where they eat. Now, there's nothing, fellow TIs, that prevents me from getting access to justice. If I was really a dangerous person, the people doing this would not even leave the place. But I'm not a dangerous person. I walk away. When I moved here to Florida, I remember driving on the outskirts of Orlando. It's the only Publix in Groveland, Florida. And there's a Japanese restaurant there. Well, earlier that day, I was at a library, like a 25-minute drive away from there. And this lady shows up with a kid, and she sits the kid at the table with me. And he just stares at me nonstop. Really weird. All the tables were empty. Now, why would a woman put a kid with a strange man that she doesn't know at a table with another man? You know why? These people knew that I was nonviolent. They knew I wasn't a threat. They wanted me to feel uncomfortable. So every time I went, it didn't matter if it was 8 o'clock at night and there was nobody there. They would put a kid sitting next to me. It was because they wanted me to feel uncomfortable in my environment. And at night I drive after this one weird experience where they dropped off the kid and there was no adult there. The librarian, he knew me. He's like, this is weird. When I go to the gas station, I see a van. It comes up. It says Youth Explorers Program. Well, here's what's weird. The van was from Tampa, but it was in Lake County. And the lady from the gas station comes out and takes a picture of me with flash on. I found that to be really, really weird. So I decided to go to a lakeside area to clear my mind and take a walk. And there was other people out there taking walks. So there was an event in the downtown area. So anyways, this car pulls off the road and the guy honks the horn. He lowers his window down. He whistles one time and then he drives off. Then it happens again. Now, these people weren't flirting with me, fellow TIs. They were fucking with me because the entire time I was getting stingray alerts. When I would go shopping in Texas, this is no joke, TIs, I would get to my car and then I would notice weird stuff all the time. Sometimes the people that harassed me would park in front of my car and on the sides. They were so sadistic that they would do this for years, TIs, years, on a daily basis, where I got my teeth cleaned, where I walked, where I worshiped, what gym I went to, where I bought candy, where I bought gas. They would harass me systematically every single day. Underneath this video, I'm going to give you guys an idea of what I experienced every single day. Every single day. It'll be the first video underneath this video. They would park outside my place and just smoke a cigarette and look up at my place. And the same guy that would be doing this would be a guy that would be behind me in line at a supermarket before I got to my house. At a supermarket maybe 20 miles away from my house. But the guy behind me in line is showing up at my house in the city of Austin, a city. The probability of an event makes that mathematically impossible, fellow TIs. It defies the probability of an event. They would do stuff like that nonstop. They would talk to doctors. Doctors. I have emails. They'll tell you. These people would come into doctors' offices. And then all of a sudden, I would receive substandard care. A while back, I developed stress hives that were severe due to this. And my doctor referred me to an allergy specialist. I went there like 4 times. I was never treated for anything. And this was after these people came in there. In Florida, I documented similiar, and they would just give me a little sample bottle of lotion for something that I really need, that doctors are telling me I need to have tested, because they want to figure out if it's due to stress, if it could be due to maybe some type of reaction from chemicals and soaps and stuff like that. So these people came in wearing suits, fellow TIs. They pointed at me, and then all of a sudden I'm getting substandard treatment. They came in, pointed at me, gave me this mean look, and then all of a sudden I'm at a dermatologist, and they open up the windows, but the other people that didn't happen to. So they go in and paint this picture that you're a pervert, you're dangerous. They bring this into your neighborhoods. So that way people don't respect you, and they treat you like you're some type of freak, that you're a pervert, you're mentally ill, you're dangerous. These were the things they would tell people. I have videos of it. They would get behind me in line and they would tell people, this guy's crazy. But this is the thing about it. These people didn't even know me, and they were all into black ops. They were partners with the CIA, the FBI, fusion centers. These people were doing this for money, and they utilized elderly people that would never be suspected. Now imagine living in Austin, Texas, being harassed for 5 years, and then you drive from Austin, Texas to Maybell, Florida. Just type up, it's spelled Mabel. And then imagine documenting the same exact things in that area. It would be mathematically impossible for that to occur unless you were dealing with some type of powerful agency, which was not only clandestine and tied to our national security apparatus, but which had ties to law enforcement, fusion centers, and other partners, which could prevent an investigation under the completely false guises of safety and security. When you figure out who the national security threats are and the domestic terrorists, it's going to blow your mind. It's definitely not the American people.